Let's get that ready. All right, yep, and it is 1 o'clock. Okay. All right, Brent, if you're ready, I will kick things off here and then hand you the mic, metaphorical mic here. So for everyone that's joining, just a couple of housekeeping items, and you may see this already in the chat. We have muted all lines on entry, but you can unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question, or you can use the chat to ask a question throughout the presentation. There will definitely be, I think, some places throughout the next 30 minutes that you may want to jump in before you lose your thoughts. So feel free to do that. Also, we are recording. So if you are just joining, we're recording the event today, and we will send that out after the event today as well with a survey. So if you wish, you can answer a few quick questions about today's event that will help us in planning any future webinars. With that, I want to invite everybody today to our webinar event, Recruiting Producers to Grow My Agency, with Brent Davis, who apparently some of you know. This is part of our full webinar series called the 7 Effective Ways to Step Up Your Insurance Agency Ownership Game. Brent, can you flip to the next slide?
Yep.
Thanks.
Maybe. There you go.
Oh. So really the whole intent of this series is to cover kind of all of the main important critical elements that help you as an insurance agency owner improve and become more successful. So we covered sales development last week, and this week is recruiting producers, and then we have a couple of other topics around training and education, and then building carrier relationships and perpetuation. So a couple of other topics as we go through this series over the next month. So we hope that you can attend, and hopefully you walk away with some tips, insight, knowledge, some new strategies. So if you go to the next slide really quickly, and just for those of you who may not be entirely familiar with Leavitt Group, just a very quick rundown of who we are. Basically, we are the 12th largest national brokerage firm in the United States. We have now over 170 locations in 27 states. So we've seen quite a bit of growth in the last couple of years. And we now have $312.3 million in consolidated revenue and over $3 billion in placed premiums. So again, been seeing quite a bit of growth over the last couple of years. And so with that, I think we can start the webinar here, and Brent, you can take over from here.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
First off, this slide here shows our team. We were a small team, been around for about 5 years with Leavitt Group. Give you a brief history. Leavitt Group has primarily grown through the years through affiliations, through affiliating with other agencies. I'd say probably maybe close to 10 years ago, decided that we were leaving an opportunity hanging out there in organic growth and bringing on good people. And so about 5 years ago, 6 actually, we started building a recruiting department within Leavitt Group. We'd actually looked at the number of money, the amount of money that we'd spent on headhunters back in 2015. It was over $1 million just in headhunter fees throughout the group, and our retention rates were still very, very low, less than 30%, which we understand is industry average. But when you're spending those type of dollars, you hope for a better return. And so we actually contracted with a gentleman out of Michigan who had been using a particular approach to hire insurance producers. Contracted with him, he came and consulted with us and helped us build our team. Of course, he had a very specific process. We followed the specific process, and we've put our own little spin on it. And so I'm going to go through a lot of those principles today, and keep those in mind. And if you want to use some of those in your own agency, again, put your own spin on it. But the principles we've found to be very, very true and sound principles. And we've, over the last 5 years, proud to say we've had tremendous success, especially when you compare it to our old method of hiring producers, which is just spend a lot of money on headhunters. And I hope I don't have any headhunters here today. They might be offended. So before we get into the process, though, it looks like this is great. We're seeing a lot more people jump on right now. I want to use the chat function and ask you guys a question. So find the chat feature down at the bottom, your bottom bar, and I want you to start putting in words to describe a successful insurance producer. And let's just take the next minute and just throw a bunch of stuff out there. And Heather, I can't see the chat, and so if
Yep, I can see it.
if you don't mind just shouting out some of those
I
words
sure
you're
will.
seeing.
First one is coachable.
Okay, good one.
Thanks,
Good
Jake.
one.
Focused.
Great. It's one I hear a lot too. Got a great focus as an insurance producer. It's not easy.
Willing to put in time and effort to build book. Energized. Motivated.
Okay. All great attributes, all true. Every one of those true.
And takes it on as their own business as well.
Yeah. Ownership in their book, ownership in what they do, for sure.
Willing to be mentored.
Yep. Coachable, willing to be mentored.
Yep.
They still coming in?
That's the last one. So maybe we'll get a couple more trickling in. So.
Okay. Well, I asked that question a lot, and I never get, and I'm always worried that I'm going to get this answer, but I never get insurance experience. We have to find somebody with experience. Your experience makes you great. We actually focus on, and you guys, just thank you. You proved my point. We try to focus when we go and recruit on four main. Our focus is fourfold when trying to find a producer. The first one, obviously, personality. And sometimes we confuse this with sales competency. It's like, oh, that's a nice guy, he must be really good at sales. It's not true. Personality is important. This is your ability to relate to other people. Sales competency is your ability to get in front of decision makers, to be able to bring the deal to a close, talk business with that owner, close deals. Though technical aptitude, we believe that if we find somebody smart enough to learn a complex product, complex industry, we can teach them insurance. And some of the attributes that were thrown out earlier, I like the one they look at this as their own business, because you find the right candidate and they're smart enough, you don't really have to coach them. They'll come. Well, you'll coach them, but you don't have to hold their hand. They'll actually come to you, and then you can coach them. And then finally, we call it our PhD. They've got to have a PhD, which is poor, hungry, and driven. We like those people in that stage of their career where they want more. They're unhappy with what they have, in any sort of degree. They want more out of life, and they're willing to go work and go get it. In order to, I really want to drive home the point that we want to find people outside the industry, that this is the best place to look for talent. I won't say it's the only way. We do, and there's places and times when it's appropriate to go find somebody inside the industry. But if we're just doing it to make it easy on ourselves, so we don't have to train somebody, we're in for some challenges, and I want to go through that right now. So a couple statistics here. The number of PNC agencies, and I've compared, some 850,000 plus. This is compared to Leavitt Group and the type of agencies that we have within our group. There's about 850,000 of them across the nation. That's grown about 30% in the last 10 years. And so there's more people vying for talent. McKinley, and then the average age of an insurance producer is also getting older. McKinley and Company back in 2018 did a study and determined that the average age of a producer was 59 years old. I think that seems a little old. Maybe they're right. I don't know what sample size they used, or if maybe they had an outlier, somebody that was 1,000 years old in their sample size. But so I looked at Leavitt Group, and the average age of our producer is 48. Still no spring chicken, but good. Maybe we're doing something right here. The point is, we've got to keep feeding in new talent and young people into our industry to build books and become future leaders. I want to go through 5 really quick before I get into our process. I want to go through 5 quick statistics. Over the last 6 years, we've compared the producers that we've hired inside the industry with experience versus those that came with maybe just sales talent, or we saw sales ability in them, compared those outside the industry basically to those in. We found that the year 1 production of these producers, the experienced producers we hired, about 23,000, the non-experienced 26. And you could look at that and say, okay, they barely beat them, the non-experienced, but wouldn't you think an experienced guy would blow the other guys out of the water? Because they shouldn't need training. So this, in my mind, is a massive failure for those producers that we hired from other companies. Year 1 salary, they were typically more expensive, about $20,000 in base salary for the first year, or whatever subsidy we went up paying them. Retention, we feel good about this one. We've kept about and this one, in my opinion, is a wash, 45, 42% that we're keeping. I have not counted any of the producers we've hired in the last 12 months. We took those guys off, guys and gals. But we're keeping about 40% of our producers that we're hiring with the focus of sales first, sales ability first. Average employment length of failed hires, the experience we're showing less tolerance for, less patience, and we're cutting them within 144 days. Still digesting this statistic fully, but looks like we're being a little more patient with the non-experienced. And then this one's significant. This last one, saved it for last for a purpose. Average book size of currently employed producers. So these are all the ones we've hired over the last 6 years that are still with us, still very new producers. The experienced producers have an average book size of about 77,000, as opposed to the non-experienced sales guys that come in and we're about 180,000. So quite a significant difference there. So here's the plan. We'll put that aside now. Now you know where our focus is. Where I think your focus should be is not forgetting to look at candidates outside the industry as you recruit and as you grow your agencies. So we have a 4-step process. Plan, we make a good plan, we go through our source and attract phase, we have a selection phase that we go through, and then onboarding that we'll walk through. Basically, we're not playing pin the tail on the donkey here. We have a process to maximize the success of new hires. So the first step in the process is, I'm not sure if any of you have used scorecards in the past. I'm not opposed to scorecards. We don't use them, but we try to create a document. We'll have an interview with one of our agencies or location that's hiring, and we've got a process we go through to understand our agency, understand they're looking for. This is an example on the right of a document that we build that our team gets familiar with after the hiring, after the planning process. And the reason why we do this and get familiar and almost memorize this document that we create is because it creates focus within our team on who we're looking for. It helps the candidate as we talk to them. We're not just asking a list of basic screening questions. We're talking about the agency. We're talking about Leavitt Group, and we're able to, because we know the information better. We're able to have more intelligent conversations with the candidates who are our higher level candidates. It also helps us reduce biases. Now, just for example, biases. We were talking football beforehand, so I'll use this as an example. Jerry's a big Ravens fan. John likes the Browns. Heather's, the Cardinals. I'm a big 49er fan. We were out in San Jose, and I met a guy over the phone, talked to him, talked Niners, loved this guy, and invited him to come meet with us in person. And when we finally flew out there and met with him and a few other candidates, realized that I kind of let that bias warp my opinion of him. The guy had no business being in the same room. This position was far beyond him, and we basically wasted his time and ours. And so we want to make sure that as we go through this process, we're staying focused on the plan and not getting hung up in biases or in weaknesses or minimal weaknesses or strengths that the candidates may have. So as we build a pipeline, now we're going to start to source and attract. We figure there's two types of candidates. Either you're passive, you're not looking for a new job, or you're active, you're looking for a new job. And then there's two basic methods of finding talent. That's active, where we're going to be very active using LinkedIn and social media to go out and find the type of person we want and talk to you. And then passively, these are basically your job postings or job ads you're going to run out on various internet platforms. I'll tell you, most people, when they try to fill a position, they're using Block D. They're going to Indeed and they're putting a job ad in, and then everybody that's looking for a job applies to their, or everybody that sees their job ad, and likes it will apply to their job, and that's who they get to deal with. That's their candidate pool. We want to play with a much bigger pool, feed way more candidates into the funnel. And I'll tell you, Block A, where they're not looking for a job and we have to go out and find them, typically the better candidates. Referrals are also very big in today's day and age with just the job market. We live by a kind of a saying, A players know other A players. And so when we do a search, we look for the A players within a certain agency. We want to talk to them and we try to pull their, talk to them about the other people they know. So once we use a lot of these tools, LinkedIn, Indeed, Zoom Info's new product out there. They've got a recruiter product that's really, really kind of cool. Quick pitch for them. We basically go through several hundred resumes, and we look for the very, very best. We try to interview at least 20 to 30 of those on the phone. The purpose of the phone screen, it's very quick, 15, 30 minutes. We want to eliminate all your B, C level players. We're looking for the cream of the crop here. Hopefully, there's a few misses at this point, but we're very simply, do they have the building blocks that we're looking for, the type of sales experience, and how they act on the phone? Can they sell themselves? Are they dynamic? Below, on the bottom part of the screen, here's a few questions that we ask, just kind of a structure. Try not to do anything very verbatim, keep things very conversational. One of the questions I do like to ask and understand about the candidate is understanding their sales process. Tell me about the last sale you closed. Walk me through your process. So I'm going to stop right here and ask if anybody has any questions. And Heather, if they put them through the chat, that's great. Read them to me. If not, unmute yourself and let me know if you have any questions. If there's no questions, I'll just keep moving on. But let me just stop and ask.
And you all have the ability to unmute yourself as well if you'd like to ask a question.
Okay, clear as mud.
Right.
Moving on. Now it's going to get fun. So once we interview 20 to 30 candidates, COVID's made things kind of nice where it's a little more socially normal to interview somebody over Skype or Zoom. And so we do a fair amount of that, but we still like to get out to our agencies, look people in the eye, and sit down with them face to face for about a 60-minute interview. Now, the gentleman that consulted with us that helped train our team, he was big on this process, and I am too. I think this is a wonderful interview process, but he says stay away from techniques like if you guys have ever seen the sell me this pen gimmick in an interview. Against that, don't really get much information off of that. And then also just these magic lists of questions. I've been asked over, a handful of years from coworkers and other people, that need, people I know that I'm in recruiting. Hey, can I see your list of interview questions? Or do you have any special questions you ask? Because I've got to interview this candidate. And I tell them I don't. We don't keep any list of magic questions. We really want, because we're not looking for data points. That's not the most important thing to us when we're hiring a producer. We're looking for patterns of behavior. And because we don't care. Like, we don't care how well you use Excel or how much insurance experience you have. If you can't sell it, if you're not the right type of person, we're not going to have any success with you. So what we typically do is we sit down with them for about an hour, let them tell their story in chronological order, try to focus on what they've had successes with, certain challenges they've run into. A big one that always comes up: why they left, why they transitioned from one job to the other. And then we make sure that we don't just take their first answer, and typically these first answers, why'd you leave your company? Well, my boss and I didn't see eye to eye. We don't want to just fill in the blanks for that candidate. We want to know in depth why, how, tell me more. And that's really where the magic of this interview style comes in. And we learn so much more about a person by asking good follow-up questions. There's also something that happens where nerves are a little high. People are giving very blank answers. They don't really expect you to even on part of the interview. The interviewer typically can be kind of nervous at times, and so we don't ask very good follow-up questions. We miss out on so much information about in this person's story by not asking follow-up questions. We give time for them to ask questions about our job. The depth of those questions are a big tell for us on how serious they are about it, their intelligence, but it's definitely maybe 10 to 15 minutes part of the interview. And finally, at some point in the interview, sometimes even at the very end, we'll give them an objection. And my first thought with this objection was, it's kind of gimmicky, right? We tell them why they're not good at this job or why we don't think they're a fit. And it felt a little gimmicky at first to me, from the guy that's training me. He says, avoid gimmicks, but here's this gimmick. But as I've done it over the last 5 years, I've realized it's not gimmicky and it's extremely important. And the type of information we've been able to pull out, because I'll tell you, everybody you sit down with will have you will never sit down with a perfect candidate. There will be some sort of flaw or reason why they're not perfect at this job. And you need to identify that reason and tell them about it. And give them some. Salespeople need objection, and we want to see how they handle it. Let me just share a few stories with you on these objections. I've got 3 in particular that come right to mind. The first gentleman, a guy that I met in Salt Lake City, he'd been with State Farm for about 4 years, take-home income about 25 grand, not very great. And as we dug into a day in the life with him, 46 hours a day he was working. He's a guy that came to us. The agency had recommended him. They loved him, met him somehow, and they says, we want to hire this guy, but why don't you interview him first? So we interviewed him, dug some of this information out of him. And at the end of the interview, I said, man, I won't say his name. I don't think you can hack it in this industry. You don't have the work ethic. It seems like you just kind of, you're very docile and passive, and this is, this is going to chew you up. And you don't have the work ethic to be a producer for our company. And literally he hung his head down, the air went out of him, sighed, he's like, yeah, you're probably right. And not that we, didn't know that was coming, but it's a good example of seeing how a guy, I mean, he was already on the fence with us, and he failed. 100% did not want to hire that guy. Gal out in Montana that we hired. She was 8 years, business development role only, had never closed a deal, Wells Fargo, very sharp. But we still told her, we says, hey, you've never closed a deal, and we've got concerns that you'll be able to close deals with us. And man, she stood right up and it's like, hey, this is the next step in my career, and I know I can do this, and this is the reason why I'm leaving Wells Fargo. And if you hire me, I promise you that I will be one of your top performers. And by golly, she's been with us for a couple of years now, and she is a top performer. heading to Circles of Excellence trip to Rome with our team. They're actually there this week. So, and then finally, here's a guy we met out in Florida who I actually really kind of liked at first. The guy's selling HVAC, sold some financial services, and he kept talking about this innovative new prospecting techniques. One that he just couldn't explain to us as I kept digging in. And I finally told him, I was like, listen, man, it seems like you're looking for shortcuts with everything you're doing. And I just can't get a clear answer out of you on this innovative new technique that you're using. And he monologued for about 10 minutes, stumbled over his words. At one point, he pounded on the desk. He says, hey, I can do this job. Is that what you want to hear? And really got quite agitated with us. And we, respectively, at the end of the process, we sent him an email, said you're not a fit. And this is more just a little bit of comic relief here. But here's the email we got back from him. He said, now, just so you know, just for context, that none of the agency leadership had attended the interview at that point. So he says, with all due respect, the agency you're referring to didn't even have the audacity to attend our meeting. I'm sure they knew that their current needs, I'm sure they knew what their current needs were beforehand, which is why they didn't bother to show up. So basically, Leavitt Group wasted my time. The truth is that your organization is only aware of white swans, and I'm a black swan. I'm the best of the best when it comes to a consultative sales approach, one that he couldn't explain to us. And I have a finely tuned strategic process for acquiring or keeping the best buyers and efficiently, more efficiently than you've ever seen done. It seems like you're looking for someone who's willing to learn and grind using old school tactical approach. Yes, we are looking for someone who's willing to learn and grind. There's no need to keep an open line of communication. It wouldn't be a good fit for me anyways. My condolences on the mistake. It sure feels like a win. I'm sure it feels like a win, but the good news is y'all will never be able to calculate the opportunity costs. It will never really hurt. Good luck. And so, and honestly, here's a guy that he was our favorite candidate going into a lineup. And through this conversational approach, just chipped away at his character. And man, like had we gone through a very superficial process, we may have hired this guy, but or at least recommended it to our agency, but we didn't, thank goodness. And we've got some great data points now on this guy, and we'll avoid him in the future. So again, any questions about the process? I feel like I'm just talking a bunch. Maybe that's the point of this, but any questions to this point? Anything in the chat, Heather?
Yeah, actually, Brent, I was just going to let you know, there was a question from Walker Nolan back around the promoting or looking for people on LinkedIn. The question is, what keywords are used for LinkedIn and Indeed searches? Yeah,
great. That's an awesome question. So obviously sales, and we've got a list of them, sales, we'll hit insurance, but there's account executive is big, executive sales executive. I should actually pull up that list. That we actually have a long Boolean strand that we plug in. So when we do look for insurance guys, we will put that in, even look for specific companies. But yeah, for the sales guys, it's typically sales. We'll put in Circles of Excellence, President's Club, things like that. So we're hopefully pulling forward the better salespeople, and that's not all of them. There's a lot of different variations. But I'll tell you, Walker, something we've run into, which is kind of interesting, with these new Boolean searches and these keywords. Companies are starting to protect their salespeople. There's a company down in Texas that we tried to find their salespeople. They're now calling their account executives or their producers. They're referring to them as insurance architects. So they're using weird, like strange words, like Subway, right? They call their people sandwich artists, and so we're seeing that done a little bit more. And so we have to keep our nose to the grindstone and pay attention to what's out there. So, but yeah, good question. Anything else? Any other questions? Anything else?
Nothing else in the chat, Brent.
Yeah,
no.
Cool. Great. Thanks for the question, Walker. So after we interview, we'll actually send a test to the candidates, typically the top top 2 or 3. Now, maybe I failed to mention, we'll interview on the phone 20 to 30, move forward in a face-to-face interview with maybe 5 to 8, and then of those 5 to 8, we'll test the top 2 or 3 at best, really, because if there's nobody we like from the 5 to 8, we'll just start over. But what we use is a test, company named Wiley profile PXT test. These are my results, and let me just explain to you what it is really quick. We've created a benchmark. You see the green and the blue bars within those results. Those bars are a benchmark made up of of basically giving this test to some of our top producers across the Leavitt group. And so our top producers fall somewhere within those blue and those green bars. And so when a candidate falls outside, we don't necessarily disqualify them, but it's going to raise a lot of questions. We look for about an 80% match. And so you can see with mine, we're going to want to sit down and talk, and the report gives us a lot of examples of things we might want to talk about within my behavioral style and my thinking style. And so we have that question. Below 80%, above 80%, we're probably fine, which is great. We start going below 50 and we got some real concerns. But 74, not necessarily disqualified. It's just going to raise the next level of questions. We'll then take that test and our notes, and we'll pass them forward to the agency, which may not apply to your guys' situation, because you guys have already gone. If you're hiring, you're walking through this process now. But we pass that along, and then we let the agency have the final say in who they hire. Hopefully, we've brought forward someone or multiple people that we believe is a strong fit for this job, and you just need to find out if they're a good cultural fit for your office, and away we go. So basically, that's the process. I need to emphasize one last thing: is the importance of mentorship. We're going to, hopefully, you're finding people that will come to you and take ownership in their book, and they're working hard, but there's still such an important emphasis on making sure you're there as a mentor, and that you're laying out a good roadmap for them. And Peggy Hansen, who I think will be the next in this series, will cover this document and mentorship. And that's about it, Heather. Questions, concerns, or just take it away.
Oh, sorry, let me unmute myself. Yeah, you're right. Peggy is next week. I believe it's Thursday, September 9th at noon. She is the next one in our webinar series. So you can see that up here on the screen right now. We've got a couple of other that have been scheduled. How to become a great technician, which is really about becoming kind of an expert in all things insurance. And that's on September 16th with Dan Olson. He's one of our co-owners of our Leavitt Group Northwest agency up in the Seattle area. And then we do have the perpetuation strategy event scheduled for September 20th. You can register for both of these events right now. The last two in our series, we have those probably coming out here in the next couple of days. So if you're on our email distribution list, look for those. You'll be able to register for those last two events of the series. We've also been sharing everything out on our LinkedIn page. So if you don't follow us on LinkedIn yet, please do so. But that's really what all we've got for today. And actually, if you could just switch to the last slide, there's just some contact information. In case anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to us at any of the ways here listed on the screen. I already talked about LinkedIn. So so that is it for today. If there are no other questions, I don't see any in the chat, Brent. We can conclude today's session.
Sounds
and
good.
Just wanted to thank everyone for their time.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. All right.